Jesus said, as long as I'm in the world's light. And when he said this, he spat on the ground, made some mud with his saliva, and spread it as an ointment on the man's eyes, and said to him, go wash in the pool of Siloam, which means sent. Sometimes the miracle just comes instantaneously, we don't do anything. Other times, we have to take steps of faith and obedience. And that's what he tells this man. And so he went and washed and came back seeing. He could see. Now, don't you know that somebody had to go with him to help him wash until he could see? Couldn't get there on his own, probably. So some other folks had to link up with him and take steps of faith and obedience. That's why we need each other. It's hard to go it alone. When the neighbors saw, and those who used to know him by sight as a beggar saw him, they said, is not this the man who used to sit and beg? Some said it is he. Others said no, but he looks very much like him. Some people just can't believe that a miracle could really happen. But he said, yes, I am the man. So they said to him, how are your eyes open? He replied, the man called Jesus made mud and smeared it on my eyes and said to me, go to Siloam and wash. So I went and washed and I obtained my sight. He just told the story. He didn't embellish it. He didn't try to explain it. He just proclaimed it. It's all we have to do. Know Christ better, love Christ more. Tell others what God has done for us so that Christ may be better known and more loved. They asked him, where is he? He said, I do not know. Then they conducted to the Pharisees the man who had formerly been blind. Well, they're going to take him to the church, to the religious leaders. Now, it was on the Sabbath day that Jesus mixed mud and opened the man's eyes, and he's going to get in trouble for that. So now again the Pharisees asked him how he received his sight, and he said to them, he smeared mud on my eyes, and I washed, and now I see. Same story. Some of the Pharisees said, this man Jesus is not from God, because he does not observe the Sabbath. He's not keeping our religious rules. He didn't stand up at the right place in the service, or he didn't wear the right clothes, or he didn't do the right, their religious rules. How could a man who's a sinner, a bad man, do such signs and miracles? So they had a difference of opinion among them. The controversy. Accordingly, they said to the blind man again, what do you say about him, seeing that he opened your eyes? And he said, the blind man, he said, he is or he must be a prophet. He's got to be from God. However, the Jews did not believe that he had really been blind and that he had received his sight until they summoned the parents of the man. And they said, is this your son whom you report as having born blind? How then does he see now? Parents answered, we know that this is our son, and that he was born blind. But as to how he can now see, we do not know, or who has opened his eyes, we do not know. He is of age, ask him, let him speak for himself and give his own account of it. Then we find out why. His parents said this because they feared the leaders of the Jews, the religious leaders. For the Jews had already agreed that if anyone should acknowledge Jesus to be the Christ, he should be expelled and excluded from the synagogue. When you make a stand for Christ, some people aren't going to stand with you. That is a reality. On that account, his friend said he is of age yesterday. So they bring the guy in. I'm kind of fast forward. The second time, they say, give God glory. This fellow we know is only a sinner. And the real word there means a wicked person. Then he answered, I do not know whether he is a sinner and wicked or not. But one thing I do know, that whereas I was blind before, now I see. Once again, he's just telling the story. He's not trying to explain it, justify it, embellish it, he's just telling them the truth. So they said to him, what did he actually do to you? How did he open your eyes? They want to see now if he had some kind of new cure, some natural explanation. The man answered, I already told you, and you would not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Can it be that you wish to become his disciples also? Now the guy's kind of messing with him. He's kind of playing with him. They stormed at him, jeered and sneered and reviled him and retorted, you are his disciple yourself, but we are disciples of Moses. We know for certain that God spoke with Moses, but as for this fellow, we know nothing about where he hails from. So now they say, well, we don't even believe. It might be a foreigner. Can't be trusted. The man replied, well, this is astonishing. Here a man has opened my eyes, and yet you not know where he comes from. That is amazing. We know that God does not listen to sinners. Now he's speaking to them the truth. But if anyone is God-fearing and a worshiper of him, of God, and does his will, God listens to them. Since the beginning of time, it has never been heard that anyone opened the eyes of a man born blind. If this man, speaking of Jesus, were not from God, he would not be able to do anything like this. They retorted, "You were completely or wholly born in sin from head to foot." Now they're going to condemn the message. They don't like the message. They don't like who he's talking about, and now they're going to condemn the guy that brings it. "Who do you presume to teach us?" So they cast him out, threw him clear outside the synagogue. Jesus heard that they had put him out, and meeting him, he said, "Do you believe in and adhere to the Son of Man or the Son of God?" The man answered, "Who is he, sir? Tell me that I may believe in and adhere to him." Jesus said to him, "You have seen him. In fact, he is talking to you right now." And the man called out, "Lord, I believe." And you know what believe means. I rely on, trust, I cleave to you, trust and obey. And he worshiped him. Then Jesus said, we're going to hear now from Jesus his own words of patience. "I came into this world for judgment, as a separator, in order that there may be a separation between those who believe on me, trust and rely on, and those who reject me, to make the sightless see, and to make those who see or think they can see become blind." Some of the Pharisees, again the religious leaders, who were near, hearing this remark, said to him, "Are we also blind?" Now that's a great question. At least some of them are saying, do we have a problem? You know, sometimes church people are the last folks to admit that we need help, or that we have a problem. You know, we think we've got it all figured out. Listen, I don't have it all figured out. If I had it all figured out, my tithes would be a lot bigger. Are we blind? Now they also may be accusing him. Are you calling us blind? Do you know who you're talking to, Jesus? Jesus said to them, "If you were blind, you would have no sin. But because you now claim to have sight, you claim to know what God's all about, you claim to have all the answers, your sin remains. If you were blind, you would not be guilty of sin. But because you insist that you do see clearly, you are unable, by their own choices, to escape your guilt." It's a lot of scripture. Took more time reading it than I'm going to do the rest of the message, I hope. All right? What's going on? Well, simply, Jesus sees, if you fill in your blanks. Jesus sees clearly what is at the root of the heart of the situation. Jesus not only knows the what, but he knows the why. The disciples and the others, including the religious leaders, can only see on the surface. And then they often draw the wrong conclusions. Who sinned? Obviously, Jesus heals. And then he explains that as we look to God in all of our circumstances, we can bring honor and glory to the Lord. God uses the what's of life to reveal God's character. Got to tell you a little story. Some of you know I've had some more treatments this week, and so I had some home nurses coming in and hooking me up to IVs and running and jumping into it. It took 4 different home health care places to finally get to me. The first 3 all said, yes, we'll do it, and then they came back and said, no, we can't, and insurance won't pay. The 4th one said, we'll do it, we'll be here. So on Thursday, this nurse comes, and she sticks me, hooks up all the stuff, running it in, and then she asks me a question. She says, now you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but you're a pastor, and I read up on your history and the disease you struggle with. Do you think it's kind of unfair? You know, you're trying to do good. But I said, you know what? I really don't. I said, because the Lord said that in my weakness, his strength would be made manifest. Somehow, all things work together for good, and God will use you. And she said, oh. And then she shared part of her story. It's not been quite a year ago, lost a child, death at birth, and she got a lot of hurt and pain. And she grew up in the church, but she struggled. And so we sat and talked for probably an hour and a half more, sharing some things about why do some things happen to good people and why life isn't fair, but God's good, and all kinds of things that you probably heard me talk about, so I won't do that. But I looked at her, she had tears running down her cheeks, and I said, honey, you know it took 4 agencies for me to get, for you to be here. I said, God has brought you to me to help me, and maybe vice versa, to help you. I said, I'd gladly have all this junk running in my veins to get the chance to share with you today. Don't know if we'll ever see her again. It's a different nurse the next day and a different one the day after that. But God sees the whys. We don't. We often don't see the why. That's why we just take a step of trust, of faith, and obedience. The religious leaders cannot accept what was done at the hands of Jesus, because to accept what was done means they must accept the who of Jesus' nature and origin. In their minds, since they can't accept who Jesus really is, because if they did, they'd have to confess their own blindness, their own sin, they made Jesus a sinner and the man of faith. Because if they don't, their world comes unglued. The status quo is all